So today we're going to talk a lot about our story, how we started, where we're going, your background, my background, and all the projects that we've been working on. But I want to start with a story because it's funny that we're starting this podcast around this time, because it was around this time 2 years ago that we first connected over all of these different ideas that we're still building today. And I was laughing a little because at that time I was still working a full-time job, and I would like come home after work on this for like as long as I could until I would fall asleep, or take calls with you while I was still in the office. And the energy was just like so potent that I was able to like push through all of that because there was so much enjoyment that came from it. And it's just interesting. It's funny that we're starting doing this today because it's like literally 2 years looking forward. And so I think about it's very symbolic of how far we've come on this journey and how much we've actually accomplished in such a short period of time, especially as a team of two.
Mhm.
So I was just like reminiscing on all of that. And I know we've been
Yeah.
talking about that a lot recently, like, some funny stories that have come up. And I just remember thinking, like, you know, I don't know, I cannot predict the future, but like, I'm going to just see this through, you
For,
know?
for sure. It's a good reminisce because we don't technically have a um like an anniversary date,
Yeah.
because it was like a project that I guess had been like established already, and then like, you came along for the ride and it was like, all right, cool, like we're running together kind of thing.
Hmm.
But we should go back in the archives and figure out like exactly when we first started like having those conversations, not just like with you at the other company, but like we should actually like work together on stuff.
Yeah.
And then we got the date that you became a free agent,
Hmm.
and then the date that we like actually incorporated.
Hmm.
I feel like those are all like individual anniversaries on their own.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Um, but yeah, no, good times. I definitely remember um not expecting this like whatsoever, like just having a conversation with you um because of the company that you were working with, you know what I mean, and you
Hmm.
being kind of like the point person for artists and stuff like that. And I just remember trying to figure out like, okay, exactly how can this project work in like the ecosystem of what you guys are building.
Hmm.
And you always kind of had the answers, like the blueprint for how it could work. And I think because you saw that like Eternal had so much opportunity to like work in the various spaces of the world that you were building with the company that you were with, I think that's where kind of the light started flashing, like, okay, this is beyond like this company that I'm working with, like this has
Yeah.
something that can be expansive, like in like a multitude of different areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, very good times for sure. It definitely felt like you were like skipping school.
It did.
You know what I'm saying? Like
It really did.
skipping school. And like I never thought about you potentially like not being there anymore or anything,
Mm.
but there were definitely times where I was like, she's probably either gonna quit or they're gonna fire her. you know. But I also knew like at that time it's not like I had money to pay you or anything. So it's crazy to see how we got from that point, of not necessarily knowing how things were gonna
Yeah.
pan out or how we were going to be able to continue working together to getting to this point for sure.
Yeah. I'll say I can say this confidently now, 2 years later, but us launching the company is the reason that I then left. And by left, I mean was kicked out.
Yeah. But did
So,
we wait, but did we like launch it officially before you were gone?
yes, we
Oh wow.
did. We launched officially. So this is the timeline. we need to go back and look at the specific dates, but it was around October 2 years ago that we had our first like meeting where we sat down and we said, okay, here's Eternal Garden, here's Origins, here's the next project, which would be Zero. And we brainstormed all of these crazy ways that we could do some kind of like tech centered activation or drop.
Mm-hmm.
And once we like narrowed in on that, we then said, okay, well, our next step is before we launch this project, we need to publicly announce this company.
Mm-hmm.
So people understand there's this bigger entity, there's this bigger thing that's happening.
Yeah.
So we did that in like November, I think, maybe end of October. And I'll just speak freely. I just remember saying to you, like, I need to be somewhat on the down low about all this. Like, you can put me, I think we put me on the team
I
slide or
remember that.
something.
Yeah, no, we couldn't put you on the team slide. We
Oh, we
had to,
couldn't. Okay.
yeah. It was like me, Aiden, Lottie, Pete, but we couldn't put you on it because I remember now because we had to go back and add you to all the team slides. But that was when it was still like the green like Garden X deck and everything. Yeah, good times for sure.
Wow.
That's hilarious. That is actually so funny.
Yeah,
Because I would bring you up all the time, but they'd always be like, "Oh, she's not on the deck." I'm like,
Yeah.
Can't.
It was an interesting, very transformative time for sure. And you were on a completely, you were on a different journey because you were already so deep in all of this. You had already developed so much. Like when I first started talking to you about the project, the first thing that you showed me beyond everything I had seen publicly was this like super deep notion where you had developed the story of Eternal Garden structurally. You had developed storylines, main characters, locations. The whole world it was enough information for me as an outsider to start visualizing the world. And for me, that was kind of a tipping point of a bunch of new ideas came into my mind about all the different ways that we could grow this, that you could grow it, and then eventually us as a team could grow it. But I think it would be helpful to go back into the archive and talk about the origins of the origin.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful to share some of that information so that it really sets the stage for where we're at now.
Well, what do you want to know? That's the question.
Your life story.
When you say the origins of the origin. Life
story.
Okay. Do you have everything you need? Do you have water?
Yes, I have water.
You have a comfy pillow behind your back?
Yep, I have popcorn and everything.
All right, fantastic.
You could also go from like the launch of Eternal Garden if you want.
I'm gonna just take it from the top.
Go ahead.
And bring us all the way.
Go ahead.
Bring us all the way here because once I start telling the story in different pieces, we're gonna get lost.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm TK. I'm a singer, songwriter, producer based in Los Angeles, California. I'm of Nigerian descent, but I was, for the most part, born and raised in PG County, Maryland. Well, not born, but raised in PG County, Maryland. I spent like my early childhood living in the UK, Crystal Palace, to be exact. And I grew up in single parent household, just me and my mom, trying to figure it out. Didn't come from a lot of money or like a lot of resources, but she was an extremely hardworking person. And I had a first row view at, how much she showed up for our family every day just to make sure that there was, a roof over our head and food on the table, even though there were a lot of times where we had to move or, certain bills weren't paid, lights are off, things of that nature. She never put me in a position, early on where I didn't know what was going on. But at that time, yeah, she exposed me to a lot. She exposed me to a lot of different types of music. Brandy, Craig David, the Beatles, Michael Jackson, a lot of UK pop acts, so like Robbie Williams, Madonna, Celine Dion, like the list goes on and on. I was exposed to a lot of like early 2000s pop music, especially like living in the UK. But also as a kid, I grew up in that era where like Disney movies were, they're just now getting to the point where you can have them at home and just like pop them into the TV. So, Lion King and Hercules and Aladdin were that was my musical foundation as a kid growing up. She would always tell me that I would take like the cases for the movies and I would take like pens and pencils and I'd be playing drums on them while I was singing the songs. And then there were other movies like Sister Act 2, for example, watching like Whoopi Goldberg and Lauryn Hill do their thing, getting into Lauryn Hill as an artist. There were so many like early influences that I had that kind of shaped my musical like perspective at an early age. And then growing up in church, being Nigerian, I grew up in Celestial Church, which is like a very spiritual Nigerian Christian church. And my mom was one of the lead singers in the church. So every Sunday I would see her like go up and sing solos in church and everything. And that on top of the things that I was consuming from television and from all these artists, that left a big imprint on me as an individual. And I kind of knew really early on that I wanted to be a singer. At the same time, arena culture obviously is really big in Europe. So I watched a lot of soccer games. My favorite team was Chelsea. So it was kind of like either I wanted to be a pro soccer player or I wanted to be, um, you know, a famous singer. But that energy of all that together, I knew that I had big dreams. It wasn't just I just want to be like a cabaret singer or just write songs for fun. I knew I wanted to go all the way with it. So around the age of like 8, 9, I ended up flying out to PG County, Maryland, just outside of DC, to live with my grandparents. My mom stayed back in the UK and basically flew to like live with extended family who I had met before, but I was just now, just really now coming into consciousness as a human being. So
Mhm.
these were not people that I had a relationship really with at that time. And, early on, that can do a lot to you as a young person because you're still getting to know these people are like getting to build like a sense of familiarity the same way that
Mhm.
you would with a parent. So for a long time, I just felt like I was on my own. Like I had to grow up really, really quickly because
Mhm.
also growing up in an African household, and this is consistent for, I'm sure, a lot of people that grow up in like immigrant households. There's a lot of strict rules, strict guidelines. Your culture is everything,
Mhm.
right? And like what you do with your name, what you do to like honor or dishonor your family is a really big deal. And also just being self-sufficient was a thing also. So I was cooking a lot of my own meals at that time. I was doing a lot of my own laundry at that time. You know, we were at that time it was a nice like stable housing situation, which was not something that I had experienced really up until that point. But there was a lot happening inside the house that just made me have to really sober up and grow up and really think about how to just handle life on my own
Yeah.
early on. So it also helped that during that time and just before that time, I also traveled a lot. Like I used to fly back and forth to visit family in different places, visited Nigeria, the UK, US, things like that. And a lot of the time I would travel by myself. So I already had that kind of sense of independence and that helped me a little bit like transitioning into this situation. But yeah, over the years, I think like that mentality really stuck with me.
Mhm.
And my uncle, who I shared a room with, he was really into video games. He was really into anime. He was really into TV shows. So naturally, like I was doing everything that he was doing. I was consuming copious amounts of anime. I was playing so many different types of video games, RPGs, fighting games, first person shooters, racing games, you name it. And one thing about my family, like everybody in my family is super smart.
Mhm.
Like everyone is like a genius pretty much. So we're all like very tech savvy. Like even my grandmother was a computer programmer, back in the day. So sometimes I think about like how I even got to be so like tech savvy, and then I'm like,
Mm,
that's actually something that runs in my family, which is
mm,
which is funny to think about. But because music does not run in my family really, but
mhm,
that does. So yeah, I think like around the time that I really started to find my way. Living in the US, I started to get really involved in everything musical that you can think of because I still had these dreams from like my early childhood. So I was in, choir, like all throughout, like from K through 12. Like I was in choirs, concert choir, gospel choir, uh, jazz band, concert band, marching band, piano classes, like everything that I could do to express myself musically, like I took those opportunities, and I'm grateful that I was in a school system that offered those types
mhm,
of opportunities. I was in performing arts groups. One in particular was called Colors, where we would sing and dance and travel um, all across the country, like performing music from the 1950s all the way up until present day. So that was all of those experiences, but that experience in particular was really what shaped me as like a music historian, and also diversified my palette from like a genre perspective as well. So that was really, powerful to me. But also just moving from one country to another country exposes you to like a whole different side of music. So that's when I started to get, I'd say like when I was in the UK, it was a lot of pop, it was a lot of rock music.
mhm,
It was some R&B for sure. It was a lot of R&B also, but moving to the US was when I really started to get into hip hop, and that's when I started to get into like more alternative rock. So Linkin Park, Green Day, My Chemical Romance, things of that nature. And by that point, uh, also having like an African background, so having African and Caribbean genres of music like in my palette as well, just kind of made me someone that loved all different types of music, and I was willing to explore really any genre. So I was doing all these things that I could do throughout school. And then at home, I was a nerd. Like I was always on my computer. My uncle was always on his computer. So he had a computer here. And, mine was like back there. We'd
mhm,
play games together, things like that. And then, the internet was like, obviously really popular from um a user perspective, because this is like the beginning of people really being able to like generate their own content and like consume things in that way. So I was always on like anime forums, fan fiction forums where we would like write our own stories and
mhm,
be creating. I learned how to use Photoshop. I learned how to use all these different like movie tools and everything. So, we would create our own like anime signature, which was basically every time you would make a forum post, it was just a picture that showed up at the bottom. Like imagine like if you
mhm.
posted on Twitter and you just had like a picture, like a little bar,
Yeah,
right? So like if yours was the freshest, like people were like, dang, he's dope. So I learned
mhm,
how to use Photoshop in order to like Photoshop my favorite characters into my like forum banner
mhm.
or whatever. Yeah, this is the inception of all the skills that I have today, really.
For sure,
Um,
for
this
sure.
is where kind of the whole world building thing really started to make its mark on me. Um, but yeah, like I was just on my computer all day. Like Naruto was like my favorite anime at the time.
Mhm,
Um, Me and my uncle used to go on like Pirate Bay and download
mhm,
the Japanese versions of Naruto before they even made it to the US. So I had watched damn near that entire anime before it even made it to Toonami, where most people today actually consumed it, right? So
mhm,
like was consistent for shows like Naruto, shows like Pokemon, shows like Dragon Ball Z. Um, I mean, like games, Legend of Zelda, Super Mario, Halo, Call of Duty. The list goes on and on. But it was like I was at school,
Mhm.
did whatever I needed to do at school, had my after school program where I was doing something musical related if it wasn't like during school. Then I would go home and I'd be on my computer pretty much the
Mm.
entire time from, as soon as I walk in the door to when it was time for me to go to sleep. And that was more or less, doing all those things in addition to being in colors and these different performing arts programs. That was more or less my life for a majority of grade school. So my mom ended up moving out to um, the US maybe like 7 years after I had moved here. And so life kind of shifted because obviously I left being in this like kind of stable environment to like now like being with her again and also just making that transition from being an adolescent into like being a young adult and figuring out
Mhm.
exactly what my life path was going to take.
Mhm.
So, and like I said, we're still in the beginning. So
Mm.
thank you for listening. And for anybody that's watching, thank
Mhm.
you for riding with us this far. But yeah, so um, like every family drama, family issues, things of that nature,
Mhm.
and the circumstances that I was subjected to pretty much led me to kind of being on my own pretty much from when I turned 16. So, senior year of high school, really like senior year and junior year of high school, I was like staying with different friends, staying with different families or like church members, people that who I could trust and people who knew who I was, and just knew I was a young kid trying to figure it out. It didn't come from the best situation. And yeah, senior year of high school, I was like, all right, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like I applied for colleges, got into a few like pretty cool colleges, but wasn't able to afford anything, wasn't really able to get like financial aid. And for some reason I knew like early on that I just didn't want to do like the student loans thing or
Mm.
anything like that. I didn't feel like compelled enough that I needed to take on that type of responsibility, like to go to school when I already knew what I wanted to do, right? Like I knew I wanted to be a singer. I just needed to figure out exactly what that pathway was um for me. So, and also like I guess I left this out, but throughout high school, I kind of like built up my name as someone who was like the musical kid or like the
Mhm.
singer kid, like at that time we had MySpace. So basically you would go home and you would like make a song and then you would
Mhm.
upload it and then you would go to school and everybody would be like, yo, I heard your new song last night. It was so dope, bro. It was so dope.
Simpler
So,
times.
I mean, I guess that still exists today, obviously, with
For
social
sure.
media and
Mhm.
everything like that. But I had already built up that pace for myself
Mhm.
and understanding that I had an opportunity and a chance to like make it happen. So I guess you know how I even got to recording in the first place, which is important, was that I was going to a church called Temple of Praise at that time, and there were these two brothers. Their names were Julian and Julius, and they used to rap. They used to do like the gospel rap, and like it was funny because I used to look up to them so much, right? Like I used to
Mhm.
always be like, "Yo, I want to be like that," because
Mm.
I was like rapping in church. I was doing like
Mhm.
poetry and stuff. Like I was really thinking back, like I was really active when it came to like
Mm.
the performing arts in church. But yeah, I was singing. Like I didn't sing in the choir, but I would sing when there were like special events and things of that nature. I would do media there. So I always looked up to these guys. And then I had a friend who he was at church with me. He would watch them. He used to always be like, bro, like I know if I made music, I'd be able to do it better than them. And I used to just always laugh because I was like, I mean, yeah, probably. But they ended up being the guys that took me into the studio like for the first time ever. And I actually have a picture of like my first time ever in the studio. And
Julian
that
and Julius?
yes,
Okay.
exactly. And that was, my first opportunity, like even seeing what a DAW looked like
Mm.
or how any of it worked. I was like, wow, this is crazy. I didn't even
Mhm.
know that this is how music was created. I had no concept of how music was created at that time
Mhm.
from a recording standpoint anyway. So I remember like a couple years later, Um, my homie, his name was Darren Hannibal. He was like a producer, super talented guy. He was like a young Kanye West, like played every instrument, produced, rapped, everything. He kind of showed me how to produce in high school, and I was like, "Bet I'm gonna figure out how I'm gonna use these skills at some point." So, one winter, I think the winter of like my junior year or something, um, I ended up like shoveling snow around my neighborhood, and came up on this lady. She was a really old lady who
Mhm.
had like a big yard, and she was like, "Hey, I'll pay you like whatever. You could just like shovel my snow." So I shoveled her whole yard, and she paid
Mhm.
me way too much money. Like she just had money to blow, apparently. I
Mm.
think she was like elderly, and she's just thinking, I can't take this with me, so let me just like bless this kid. So I'll never forget that time was like right before Black Friday. So I took all the money that I had saved up, and I bought my first USB microphone and my first MIDI keyboard. Thankfully, I already had a computer because my dad had bought me a computer, and I cracked FL Studio, and that was my setup to like make songs. So I was making songs, putting them out, going to school. People were like, "Yo, you're dope." I would sing like the national anthem and everything. So I had already built up this, I wouldn't say a fan base, but just a repertoire of like making music, putting it out there, understanding what it takes to be an artist. No one's going to show up at your front door and just discover
Mhm.
you. You have to put yourself out there.
Mhm.
So getting back to moving on from high school life, I had no clue what I was going to do. I was like, all right, I got to figure this out. So I ended up going to a recording studio. Wow, I'm leaving out so much of the story, which is crazy because I feel like I've been talking forever. Um, but major life, major part of this entire story was in 10th grade, I had started a band called Cloud Nine.
Mhm.
And to make a super long story short, we first got together um just trying to play for our high school talent show. And me and this kid named Jason Zamora, who I'll never forget, in 10th grade, he came and did our talent show, and he was an 8th grader. And he
Oh,
came and
wow.
like he played piano, and everybody was going crazy. Like everybody was like, "Yo, who is this kid?" He was like a virtuoso on keys. So I remember like walking up to him that day and saying like, "Yo, like, one day, you know, we're gonna make music together." So the next year, we're in the same piano class. So now I'm
Mm.
like, remember what I told you last year? Like, we're gonna make this stuff happen. So following year, talent show comes up. I find him like, let's do this thing together. My homie Darren Hannibal ends up playing drums with
Mhm.
me, and then I got like a bunch of other musicians. I did like auditions and brought a bunch of other musicians to play. So we ended up playing the talent show. We won the talent show, and then kids around the school would be like, "Yo, like when is the band coming back? Like when is Cloud Nine playing again?" My homie Darren was already a rapper, so like he could
Mhm.
have played drums for us, but I was like, nah, like I want someone that could be full time doing this.
Mhm.
So randomly ran into this kid named Jonathan Livis in the hallway, and I had remembered seeing him play drums before. So like, yo, come join my band. He was immediately down.
Mhm.
So long story short, we went from playing like every event at school, like after school things. We played like pep rallies, um, talent shows, things of that nature, to then started playing at churches. I mean, we even played at nursing homes, um, you name it, to over the years, like playing different cafes, different venues, things of that nature. So senior year comes, I'm finally getting to this end of the story. Um, Senior year comes, I'm trying to figure out exactly what I'm doing with my life. My
Mhm.
homie Jason, who was the keyboard player, he was engineering at a recording studio in our neighborhood. So one time I just asked him like, "Yo, can I come to the studio with you to record?" And he was like, "All right, bro, like just don't embarrass me." Like, why would I embarrass you? Like, okay, whatever. So I ended up going to the studio with him. This is after graduation, by the way. Which, by the
Okay.
way, like went to graduation by myself. Like, I had no like family at
Mhm.
graduation or anything. So this is like
Mhm.
the stage of life I'm in, right? It's like really
Mm.
like me against the
Solo
world.
mission.
Yeah. So, um, end up going to studio with him. Met this man named Carlos Garcia recorded some hooks for some different rappers that were at the studio. And everybody was like, yo, like you're dope, bro. Like, come again tomorrow. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, cool. End up going to the studio again the next day. And I'm like, yeah, I sing too, but I also make beats. So like, oh, you make beats? I'm like, yeah. So now I'm like showing people my beats. So like, what the heck? Like, who are you? Like, where'd you come from? I'm explaining to them my whole story, my whole situation. And this dude, Carlos, which we called him Los, he was like, yo, do you want to just like stay at the studio? And I was like, absolutely. I have nowhere else to go at this stage. You know what I'm saying? I'm still like
Mm.
bouncing around, um, staying with different friends and stuff. So I end up living at the studio at that time while I'm like engineering sessions for people. Jason is still engineering sessions for people. And then we had at the studio, we had everything we needed, right? We had a full recording studio, we had a rehearsal room for our band. They had a photography, videography studio upstairs. There was a producer in the studio across from me. His name was Godfather. He had done a lot of production for big name artists like Wale, Marsha Ambrosius, stuff like that. So um now I'm just in a whole now I'm now I figured it out to a degree,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm like, okay, this is not what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting to like find a studio that I could cultivate my skills in, but I definitely wasn't expecting staying here and being here every day.
Yeah.
So I kind of made the decision that I was going to take full advantage of that situation. So during this time, a lot of stuff is happening, right? Like now my band is coming to the studio to rehearse
Mhm.
every day. Los is like, I'm going to manage you. I'm going to manage your band. I'm like, okay, bet. At the same time, I'm the lead engineer of the studio now because people are coming through and I didn't even know how to engineer really. I kind of taught myself how to engineer on the fly. People were
Yeah.
like, "We'll pay you, bro, because we see the type of music that you make and da 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 da." Da." And I didn't know anything about mixing, but I was creative. I would put the drops in people's songs and the
Right.
slowdowns and the speed ups. So everyone was really excited to work with me. And I kind of took that and was very studious about um just the scientific aspect of creating music. So studied really hard, became like a really good engineer, doing this, producing for artists, writing for artists. Now I'm getting into the full scope of media creation because we had a photography and a videography studio and that the studio was also a print shop.
Mhm.
I'm like helping an artist go from creating the song to then creating the visual. So like shooting the photo shoots
Mhm.
for them. I'm behind the camera shooting the music videos for them. Okay, cool. We have all the content. Now I'm using those Photoshop skills that I was telling you about earlier
Mhm.
and creating their album cover and their posters and their CDs. And we're printing all this stuff for them and they're taking their project that they created fully in-house with us and basically taking it out into the world. So I'm doing this for like hundreds of artists at this time. At the same time, me and my band, we're doing all this rehearsing. We're now starting to get shows around DC. So we're
Mhm.
performing 2 to 3 times a week, right? So like you can imagine my life is just like completely immersed in music and creation and um just the full scope of what it looks like to just be a professional musician, you know, in every
Mhm.
capacity. So where does that put me? So first of all, before I continue, do you have any questions?
For sure. I mean, for sure, but just keep going. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go like just
Yeah.
continue. Finish
Yeah.
it off.
Um, so yeah, like that time period pretty much lasted from like 2010 to like 2015. And in that time, the band, we went from playing, like I said, playing these school events and playing churches and cafes to playing like theater, uh, you know, level venues in DC,
Mhm.
like the Fillmore, you know, the Howard Theater, Baltimore Soundstage, 930 Club. Like these are like pretty large venues now that we were selling out pretty much anytime that we went to do uh those shows. So it was our last show that we did as a band together was at Nissan Stadium, which is like the Tennessee Titans Stadium in Nashville.
Mhm.
Like that's, you know, the heights to which we took just being, you know, a small town band of just like really talented kids that wanted to do something. And throughout that time, we really built a name for ourselves in the area, in the DC area, especially being a band that wasn't making go-go music. Because if you're familiar with the DMV area, go-go music is like the regional genre there. So there's
Mhm.
all these different types of bands that play all their different covers or different originals with like a go-go pocket or a go-go swing over it. And basically, if you're a musician in DC, at any point you had been in a go-go band at some point, right? So that was the same for all of us too. Um, so yeah, it was that time I think was when I really cultivated my skills like the most because I was so immersed in that process. And a lot of artists that I worked with at that time ended up going on to do really great things. Like Ari Lennox is an artist, for example, who, you know, I was working with really early on in my career and really early on in her career that went on to um, you know, do really great things with her career. And, you know, we had so many legendary DMV artists at that time. You know, Logic, for example, like came through
Mhm.
um and worked with us at that studio. So I knew that I always knew this, but just with what I was able to build or stack on top of each other throughout that time, I knew that I was able to kind of go to the next level. So I had people that were telling me, you know, you should move to LA. Like, why aren't you in LA? You need to be in LA. And I'm like, I don't why would I go to LA? Like my whole life is here. I don't know anything
Mhm.
about LA. So um I want to say in like 2014, I entered a songwriting competition through Guitar Center, and it was called Guitar Center Singer Songwriter Competition, basically. Long story short, out of 30,000 competitors, I made it to the top 10. So they
Mhm.
flew us all out to LA for the first time. And um, man, it was crazy. Like we got to get like a whole tour of the city. We got to meet some really influential musicians and songwriters. They gave us a ton of gear, like keyboards and guitars and speakers and interfaces, like everything that you would want as an artist. Like they gave
Mhm.
to us at that time. So I ended up doing the competition. Um, an artist named Tess Henley, who's like really phenomenal, ended up winning that year. And then after that trip, I was like, okay, I definitely need to, you know, I need to be out in LA. Like I have drank the Kool-Aid and I understand it
Mhm.
now. So yeah, pretty much I was kind of manifesting that entire year. I want to be out in LA. I have no idea how I'm going to get out there, but I really feel like I need to expand and broaden my horizons as an artist. So, my manager Carlos, he had a really good friend named Yaru Brown, who is a phenomenal fashion designer, cinematographer, creative director, and he had shot a couple music videos for me at that time. And he had a really good relationship with Will Smith's creative director. So I guess he had played him some music and he was like, yo, this kid is dope. Like, we need to fly him out to LA. And he told me, and I'm like, bet. I'm just like waiting, like
Yeah.
bags packed, everything. Didn't hear anything for like a couple months.
Mhm.
So I ended up being like, wow, it looks like I need to just get out there on my own. So my girlfriend at the time, her mom ended up buying me a flight out to LA. And I was staying with Yaru for like the first couple weeks. And then ended up living with a homie named Mike Walls and Aiden Graven. And I was out there with just like $100 in my pocket. And I would be going to Will Smith's house, which is called Her Lake. And I'd be working with Will, I'd be working with Jaden, working with Willow on a lot of their like earlier music, you know. And at this time, I'm coming with like I guess I never really described the kind of music I was making at that time. It was very eclectic, a lot of genre bending, but it had a heavy lean in like the alternative rock direction. And so
Mhm.
everything, for the most part, that I was writing and I was producing had that type of flavor on top of it. And kind of seeing the direction, at least at that time that they went with their music, and even like where Willow is now kind of just excites me all the time. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
I know that like they were really impacted and influenced by like that genre of music, you know, early on at that time. So anyway, yeah, I'm like going back and forth like at their house working and being in LA and having no money and not knowing how um well, you know, what I was going to do. Um Ended up finally making some money from like doing those, you know, those production gigs, and was able to get a place with my friends. And now we're just like living big time, you know what I'm saying? We got a house in
Mhm.
Hollywood Hills. Life is good. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
the sun is shining, everything is bright. We're like, okay, you know, where do we uh where do we go from here? At that time, a good friend of mine, Rajay Richardson, ended up connecting me with a producer named AC Burrell, and they brought me in to work with Diane Warren. Sometimes I tell the story and people don't know who Diane Warren is, but if you don't know, she's one of the all-time most successful songwriters ever.
Mhm.
She's made more money than anybody's ever made writing songs, you know. And they brought me in as a staff producer for her. So she has like, you know, a piano. She'll go to her piano. She'll write all her songs, just lyrics, melody, and keys. And she would
Mhm.
bring it to us, and it'd be up to us to take those songs and turn them into real records. So, you know, I had opportunities to do stuff with like Big Sean, Rihanna, The Weeknd, CeeLo Green, a lot of like different pop acts. And I'm doing this at the same time as I'm like working on the Will, Jaden, and Willow stuff. So
Mhm.
I'm like, whoa, this is crazy, you know. But that early on really shaped my understanding of the music industry, because at the end of the day, the business side of working in that capacity didn't necessarily always add up to the amount of work, you know, that you're putting in. And I
Yeah.
think me always knowing that I was an artist, or I am an artist, and not just a producer, kind of gave me a different perspective of how important it was to really expend like my creative real estate on building other people's empires, if that made sense.
Mhm.
And I was only going to do it if I felt like people were like always doing right by me, if that made sense. If there was ever a sense of um I don't know, the opposite of integrity.
Mhm.
Yeah, I kind of just I've always been that way. Like I don't need that. I don't need to subject myself to those types of conditions, right?
Mhm.
So pretty much like right after that, I took a break from doing a lot of major label, you know, production and songwriting things, and I was like, I just want to focus more on the music that I'm creating with my band, and just the independent artists that I'm writing and producing for. So yeah, ended up kind of taking a break from that, and then um, you know, our band did our big show at Nissan Stadium, and pretty much we kind of had figured, because the band came out to LA like for a little while to do the show with us, and traveling and being in a completely different environment with people like really is a test to show you like, okay, is this just something that was good for where we were, right? Or is
Mhm.
this something that we can actually take globally? And I think that revealed, at least at that time, that we weren't collectively like mature enough or ready to take what we had built in the DC area, you know, around the globe. So at that time, we kind of, you know, it was a bumpy road, but we kind of made the decision like, all right, like, let's not keep doing this. Right.
Yeah.
So at this point, now I'm kind of picking up the pieces of myself, right? Because I've kind of walked away from doing this writing and production thing for a couple years. Now no longer doing this band thing. So I'm like, okay, who am I individually as an artist, and what is what is my future gonna look like?
Mhm.
So before I get to the next part, do you have any questions?
I mean, I have a lot of comments and a lot of thoughts. I think that, like, I've heard, you and I have obviously exchanged stories, but
Mm-hmm.
every time we talk, there's infinitely more details that come out just
Mhm.
naturally from conversation. And I think it's really fascinating to see how much you always talk about how much your childhood impacts the direction that you go in and who you are today in the present day, but
Mhm.
you really see it when you break it down. And that's why I love all the details that you shared because it really paints like a full crystal clear picture of why you're also capable of doing so many different things.
Mhm.
You know, we have
Yeah.
that conversation a lot, which is like you want something done right, you do it yourself. And I think that's like one of the like biggest recurring themes from this entire story.
Yeah, that's real. Because I would say, based on everything that I've said up until this point, that was always the recurring theme of my life was
Hmm.
this is the path that's being laid before you. You
Yeah.
either walk it or you die. Right? Like
Right.
there was no choice. It was like, okay,
Yeah.
I have to do this. Right? I
Yeah.
literally have to do these things
Hmm.
on my own and with the help of other people, obviously, but I have to be the steward of my own destiny. Um, and yeah, it was just always obvious that if I wasn't the person that was going to take the initiative to bring the things that I wanted to do to fruition, then it just wasn't going to happen. Like I was just going to get thrown left and right by life, and who knows where I
Yeah.
would end up. So I definitely say I'm privileged in the sense that I was able to have that influence really early on to know what it is that I wanted to do with my gifts or with my time, or career path, and that that career path aligned with the things that I'm actually good at, because I could
Yeah.
have had all these hopes and
For
dreams and just
sure.
been a terrible musician. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like we never really talk about that.
Be a different
Um,
story for sure.
right. But then also having had all those early experiences of like struggle and, you
Yeah.
know, sleeping on benches and not knowing where
Yeah.
my next meal was gonna come from.
Hmm.
Not knowing how long I was gonna be able to stay with a friend or stay with his family before, I was there for too long, right? So I always just had to kind of take initiative and get ahead of um, the situation that was put in front of me. And
Hmm.
so that contributed to my work ethic and my willingness to pull myself out of really any situation. So even when I got the opportunity at the recording studio, I could have just been like, okay, it's just cool. Like I'm staying here and just kind of been lazy and not doing what I needed to do. But that desperation and
Yeah.
like the hunger and the fact that my back was has really constantly been against the wall like
Hmm.
forever is what gave me the drive to kind of show up and go up above and beyond. And so I think I don't know, man, it's crazy, like all those different experiences just created the perfect storm to where you know now it's like, okay, I am good. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Right.
wasn't always a great producer, but because
Right.
of the situation that I was in, I was forced to have to show up every day and work every day in order to become a great producer. Then when I
Yeah.
became a great producer, that started to create more opportunities for me, right?
Hmm.
And then you just after a while you just keep doing what works. Like, okay, this is what
Hmm.
has worked for me. Being diligent, being disciplined, showing up every day, working as hard as I can, being
Yeah.
focused, making sacrifices, all of those things have continued to lead. They have led to progressively more and more success. And yeah, you
Hmm.
can like I have visions for like where I want to be at a certain time period in my life,
Yeah.
and sometimes that might not always match up with where I'm at. But when I look back at where I was and look at where I'm at now, it's like, okay, well, at the end of the day, the work at least got you to this point. Which,
Right.
if you would have told, you know what I mean, like if you would have asked 17-year-old me if he would teleport to be this age and be in this position,
Yeah.
maybe he would
Yeah.
think he could do a little bit better, but it'd be a conversation. Let's just say,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It would be a
For
conversation.
sure. For
So,
sure.
yeah, I agree for sure.
I also think it takes like maybe controversial word. It's not a controversial word, but like a bit of obsession too
Yeah,
and
definite.
commitment
Yeah.
to your craft. Like, yes, to a certain extent, in your situation, your back was against the wall, but like you said, you also had found your purpose at a very young age,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a blessing, also a responsibility, to have that awareness and that knowledge about yourself. But I think it's also, and I guess this is more in a positive light too, is like understanding what it is that you're here to do and saying, okay, anything else that sits outside of it is just noise at this point. And a lot of people may look at me like I'm crazy. I'm going to lose people along the way who don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
people that I think are close to me, people who are even just strangers on the street may not necessarily understand what it is that I'm doing, but ultimately I'm going to work towards this goal because this is why I'm here. This is why I'm here. This is what I'm here to do.
Yeah, there's a lot in that for sure because I I've always like naturally been a very like stubborn and like perseverant person.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can't necessarily attribute to anything but like maybe DNA or something, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like when you take that and you
Yeah.
pair it with the fact that I was able to find something that I was really passionate about at an early age, that does create an obsession, right? Because
Yeah.
and also like not just passionate about these things, but you know, enjoying the process of making music and being stimulated by watching somebody perform or being stimulated by playing an instrument
Right.
or whatever. It's like it creates an addiction to wanting to recreate those moments, but then also
Mm-hmm.
like recreate those moments for the way that I feel, but then also seeing how me just chasing something that I enjoy makes other people feel, right? So it's
Mm.
like this just like
Yes.
symbiotic relationship that just it's like it's crazy because it's like I don't know what other occupations this applies to,
Not the quote.
you know, what this
Not the
applies
quote.
to,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
because I can barely call
For
being a
sure.
musician an occupation. You know what I mean? That's why I did that because it's like
I
it
know.
is an occupation, but it's also what like is passionate, what I'm passionate about,
Yeah, for
right? So
sure.
it's like my passion, my purpose,
Yeah.
and my vocation,
Yeah.
all wrapped into one, which
Mm-hmm.
is called ikigai, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which like I figured out really early,
Mm-hmm.
really early. So
Yeah.
when you figure that out really early, then you're like, okay, I need to honor this, right? And
Yeah.
I need to move in gratitude. And I think
Mm.
the way to move in gratitude when you have a gift or when you have a purpose is to continue showing up every day and to continue to show appreciation of having that thing by not letting it go to waste. So,
Yeah.
I might take rest days here or there, but there's never a day that goes by where I'm not thinking about how I
Everything.
can be using my
Yeah.
gifts or my intellect or my talents to the best of my ability to not only continue to impact my life, but to impact the lives of my family members and to impact the lives of my friends and ultimately to impact the lives of strangers for the better.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, a lot of that time that I spent locked away in the studio for hours and hours and hours, tweaking things that people would never hear or studying how EQs work or how compressors work
Mm-hmm.
or reworking a piano part or singing a vocal over and over and over again. Um, those moments is what breeds greatness, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
ultimately, like greatness is mundane. It's not
Yes.
always exciting. It's the repetition, doing things repetitively until it becomes second nature, right? By the time you get bored doing it, that's when you know it's second nature. But also,
Mm-hmm.
all that time that you spend doing those things takes away from the time that you spend doing other things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the time that I would spend normally maybe hanging out with friends or spending time with family members and things of that nature went to this life pursuit.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of sacrifice in
Yeah.
chasing your dreams aggressively because you get to like be at the stage of life where I'm at and like, all right, my friends are getting married now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like people I grew up with are getting married and having children,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which I have a child, but like,
Mm.
going into these different stages of life,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not necessarily there to celebrate that with them because I haven't maybe I haven't been in communication with these people over a certain period of time, or,
Yeah.
or they're like, oh, TK is a superstar.
Mhm.
He would never come to this, right?
Mhm.
Or whatever on my end or their end that creates this thought process. All of that is a byproduct of the sacrifices that I've made in order to try to achieve something greater than most people would try to achieve.
Mhm.
For some people, it's worth it. For other people, it's probably not worth it,
Mhm.
right? I I think based on the circumstances that I was subjected to and the fact that I really had no choice but to be great, right?
Yeah.
If I wanted to live a respectable life, I can't look back on any of that with regret, because
Mhm.
I think if anybody was in my position, they would have done exactly what they needed to do, which is to continue to show up for myself like
Yeah.
every day. And that at the core of it all, like that's just what I did then, and that's what I just try to continue to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like the first that's like act one, I
Mhm.
think. Everything up until that point. And then well, I would say like before moving to LA was act one. And then where did I leave off? I left off at
Diane Warren, I
oh
think,
yes, no, well I
around
left
that.
I left off at like kind of walking away from the writing and production stuff on a
Yes.
like major label scale, and then the band
Mhm.
breaking up. So basically at this time, me and my best friend Aiden, we ended up uh renting out a recording studio downtown LA, and we lived in it for almost 2 years. No shower, no kitchen, no anything. Like we got memberships at Planet Fitness down
Mhm.
the street. Excuse me. We got memberships at Planet Fitness down the street, and we got like a little like toaster. It wasn't an air fryer; it was like a toaster.
Mhm.
And we would go shower at Planet Fitness. We would get like Beyond Meat meals from Whole
Mhm.
Foods, and we would like put them in the toaster and like cook them. And that was life. And at this time, I was working on an album called Whispers, and Whispers was like a very I'm gonna upload it to Spotify again one day because it should be there. But a very alternative rock cinematic fusion album of music. And my life for like that year and a half to 2 years was just being in there, working every single day, trying to bring this body of work to life. And to me, I think still to this day, like that's, if you want to know like the full extent of my musical imagination, I always point to that project as a good place to go, because a lot of the formulas or like the rules that we have created for for writing songs and
Mhm.
creating instrumentals and things of that nature, and even the ones that I like to stick to, I deviated from those a lot on that project. And I was sure that that project was going to be the one that was going to like change everything forever, and to a degree it did, but
For
we'll get
sure.
there. um yeah, I was doing that for a really really long time. um Ended up having a kid not long after that, and that was now a whole different you know uh event to happen,
Mhm.
because now everything that I've done and everything that I've been doing up until this point is not just like only for me,
Yeah.
right, and the people around me, but it's also for this person that cannot be expected to do anything for
Right.
himself at that at this stage of life. And so there was just like even more pressure. I feel like no one was putting pressure on me. I would say I was putting more of the pressure on myself
Mhm.
to make this thing work, right? Like
Mhm.
I've come this far with this thing. This is the best shot that we all have to live a different type of life and not like necessarily struggle. So
Mhm.
um yeah, that was my life now, was like fathering and like writing songs. And thankfully I had like a really large village around me at that time. Like my because now now we've moved out of the studio. Now I've got like a house, and with all my family members and my closest friends. And I had like a whole village of just friends, really talented people around LA, that would just come around, just like we would just fellowship and we would throw events. We would, you know, just different parties or video shoots or studio sessions or whatever. And it was just a very like um communal experience, I think, that we were all sharing together at that time. So that was like a special era. And then this brings me to actually releasing that project Whispers, because it took me like basically 2 years to really complete. I want to say like I kind of started it when I first moved to LA, but just kind of tiny bits and pieces of it. It wasn't until I got to that studio that I really started working on it full fledged. I went through a process where I accidentally dropped my hard drive and I lost the whole album.
Mm.
And then I started recreating it from scratch. And then I ended up getting that hard drive fixed. So I had like the half recreated version and then a half like made version. I put them together, and that's kind of how the album finished uh coming together. And yeah, it was like time like to put it out. I had put out a few songs leading up to that project being released, and I feel like that was when I actually started to have the most um traction and momentum as a solo artist. And I did like a big release party, everything, people come, everybody singing all the words. I'm
Mhm.
not used to this. I'm not used to having that happen. Like the last time that that happened was when I was in a band, right?
Mhm.
So, and also in a completely different city in the DMV. Now I'm in LA with a whole brand new life, brand new people around, and I'm kind of recreating the same energy. And I'm like, wow, okay, we have something here. Like this is the kind of moment I've been waiting for in order to kind of take that next step as an artist. And that was phenomenal. Went on tour as a musician with my friend Teneriel. We were touring touring with Ari Lennox at that time in Australia for her Butter Baby tour. And then I had a tour lined up to open for the Free Nationals, which is Anderson Paak's band.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, great. Like everything, music is going crazy. I got a ton of listeners now. I'm about to do this tour, everything's gonna be massive, and then the pandemic happens. So
Mhm.
um pretty much almost get trapped in Australia, on this tour, make it out of there on like the last day,
Mhm.
and now everything is shut down. So all the momentum I had at that time completely, pretty much goes out the window, and all anybody is talking about or focused on is COVID. So thankfully, um at this time I'm able to like collect unemployment checks
Mhm.
and stuff. So um I was able to kind of live like pretty comfortably. um and this was the first time in my life where I was like, okay, literally everything has stopped, right? Like the entire world has stopped. I'm not necessarily trying to figure out how I'm going to make money, like who I'm going to write for or produce for in order like to bring money in. So I was like, this, a lot of people I think looked at that time period um as
Reset.
a it was a reset for everybody no matter what, right? But they looked at that time period as like, okay, I'm going to make as much music as I could possibly make, because a lot of other people,
Mm.
they didn't commit their entire life to like I've never worked a 9 to 5, right? Like
Mhm.
my life I've always been a hustler. It's always been I'm writing, I'm producing, or I'm shooting a music video, or I'm doing a photo shoot, or I'm doing something creative in a freelance capacity in order to bring money in.
Yeah.
Most people are working 9 to 5 or working a job or multiple jobs and then creating music on their free time.
Mhm.
Whereas like for me, it was like the complete opposite. So, and there's no one right way to do it, because the benefit of doing it that way is that sometimes if you work a good enough job, you can have the capital that you need not only to create your music, but also to do what's necessary to help your music get out there, which
Mhm.
don't get it twisted. You need money in this world to
Mhm.
um really have a good shot and an opportunity as an artist. So I kind of had the opposite reaction to the pandemic, because I'm just like, wow, this is kind of the first time that I can kind of like take a break and just think
Yeah.
about what my next step forward is. Because prior to that happening, Whispers is out, I'm already working on the next album, which is called Hymns. And I did this camp where I invited like 40 different artists and musicians to come together to work on this project. And I'm still gonna put it out, probably gonna put it out next year. But this project that had like a very strong like R&B, soul, gospel vibe to it. So it's like everything was just working. Um at the same time, pandemic happens. I'm like, okay, let me just take a second. I did still work on music. I finished a lot of the music that I needed to finish at that time.
Mhm.
Um, and then, yeah, I kind of got into some different industries. Like I was doing some work in the healthcare industry randomly, where I was like, you know, brokering deals between foreign entities and like government
Mhm.
agencies and stuff. Um, and then my homie Aiden was like, yo, like we should buy some crypto. Just randomly was like, yo, we
Mhm.
should buy some crypto one day. Now, mind you, I had always known about crypto because just being like a nerd when I was younger, um, I'd known about Bitcoin and all those types of things, but I was like, I can't, even though Bitcoin was literally nothing, I didn't even have like the wherewithal or the resources to figure out how to get my hands on a Bitcoin at that time,
Right.
right? But I'm saying all this to say I had familiarity with crypto at the very least. So, yeah, he's like, let's buy some crypto. I'm like, okay, we buy some Ethereum, we buy some like some whatever else, and then end up buying Dogecoin.
Mhm.
And uh had no expectations or whatever. I think I put like $200 or something into Dogecoin at that time. Bought it at like half a penny or whatever. And over the course of like, I want to say October to January 2021, we basically watched, or maybe like to April or something. I can't remember exactly the timeline, but we basically watched Dogecoin go from half a penny to like 70 cents or whatever. So like
Yeah.
now, we had this pretty large like cash injection,
Yeah.
right? And in the midst of it, we're like trading, like now
Mhm.
we're doing like $5,000 trades and all
Mhm.
types of stuff. And my perspective and perception of money has completely changed
Right.
now. Now
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, people have money,
Yeah.
like, and people can make money and people
Yeah.
know how to make money. You know what I mean? Like I've
Yeah.
had like large sums of money here and there, but I never had a concept. There's a whole mentality that you have to have with just attraction in general
Yes.
and the things that you want um to have and the things that like other people have and how they get to the point of acquiring those things.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, like you can't look at anything as like too much for you, right? Or like too big to have, or like too
Yes.
like out of your reach. If you want something, you have to act as though you already have it,
Yes.
right? And that's how you actually attract it. And so once I went through that process, my whole like perception of money changed. And
Yeah.
um I think my life perspective really changed at that point.
Yeah.
Cause even though I was already like a perseverant person, I
Yeah.
wasn't always seeing the result, right? Like it's not just hard work, hard work, hard work, hard work, hard
Yeah.
work is what leads to getting what you want, but it's also the
Smart work.
mentality. Yeah, exactly. Just the mentality of being the person or assuming the position
Mhm.
um, that you want to have, or the person that you want to be in the
Yeah.
future. So anyway, I'm saying all this to say, because of the fact that I had found like a tiny, tiny bit of success in crypto, I now felt like I could speak crypto with people. So I went
Yeah.
to a flea market and I went to visit a friend who was selling plants at this time. Shout out
Mhm.
to Jill. And I met this man by the name of Gabriel Tumlos.
Mhm.
And he's like, yeah, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a musician, I'm an artist. He's like, oh, okay, great. What do you do? He says, oh, I'm in crypto. And I'm like, oh, I know crypto. Like
Mhm.
I bought Dogecoin. Mind you, I'm just buying positions on Robinhood at this point, because Robinhood
Right.
didn't even have a wallet yet.
Right.
Right. So I'm just not even actually holding any crypto, but I'm
Right.
thinking like I know everything about crypto. So I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah.
know crypto, blah, 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 whatever. He's like, okay, cool. Like I have this group called Mochi. It's a crypto based group. Like it would be dope if you could we should do a meeting and I want to see if you want to join. I'm like, yeah, sure. So a few weeks later, he comes by my house, to my rooftop, and we just get to talking about everything. And he starts to show me all of these different, like music NFT platforms. Like he's showing me catalog, right?
Mm.
He's showing me Zora, he's showing me OpenSea. He's asking me, he's like, yeah, do you know what MetaMask is? I'm like, no, I have no clue what MetaMask is. He's like, he didn't laugh at me, but he was like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, here's MetaMask. Like, get a MetaMask. So
Yeah.
now I'm like, okay, cool. He's telling me a bit about on-chain art in general, right?
Yeah.
Because that was kind of the primary thing. And I was telling him, like, I had a friend named Neb
Mhm.
who was telling me about NFTs for a while. I was like, yo, we gotta buy NFTs, we gotta do this and the third, showing me
Mhm.
CryptoPunks and stuff. I'm like, bro, I don't want to get into any of that. Like I don't really understand what any of that is.
Yeah.
Then as time passed, I was like, man, it'd be really dope to do like a music NFT album or something. Like instead of like pictures, what if we did it with music? This is prior to me meeting Gabe, but still not really understanding much about the world of NFTs or the world of on-chain art. So yeah, Gabe is showing me all this stuff, and then I'm telling him like, oh, that's crazy because I did want to do like a music NFT album, and he's like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, okay, well join Mochi. Like there's people in Mochi that are doing these things. So he ends up adding me to a group. I'm in a group with this guy named Pete Rango, this guy named Marco, and this artist named Halik Mall.
Mhm.
So Halik, basically the way Mochi works is it's like an accountability group, right? So you'll set a goal. Mochi checks up with you every day to see if you've been accomplishing that goal, but it's group based. So everyone has to check in. If everybody doesn't check in, then you all get penalized. So we had one person, Halik Mall, he would show up kind of like 50-50. He like wasn't always there, but Pete was basically always there. So I was always having back and forth conversations with Pete, just learning a lot about the space and trying to figure out my space in it, figuring out exactly what it was that he was doing. We
Mhm.
decided to work together to try to start building um like resources for people to understand how to get into crypto and how to uh put their art on chain and how to have a wallet and all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Um and then I want to say like a few weeks into being on this Mochi journey, um Halik does this drop on catalog for his EP and sells 4 songs for like $235,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, or something to that degree. Don't quote me, but it was something like
Mhm.
that. And I was just like, well, that explains why you haven't been checking in. But
Mhm.
also, this is exactly what I wanted to do. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I didn't know that people were already doing it,
Yeah.
or at least this was the beginning of people really um of it becoming a lot more popular because we had artists that were obviously making music NFTs like Latasha a whole year, an amazing artist named Latasha, a whole year before that was making waves with on-chain music videos, right?
Mhm.
Selling her music videos like high priced art pieces and things of that nature. So there were already people that were moving in the space. I just didn't know it, right? I'm
Yeah.
thinking like this is like a novel idea, which I guess in the grand scheme of things, it was still a pretty novel idea, but there were only just a select few people that were actually
Involved.
involved in like
Yeah.
making it happen. So, um, at this stage, I'm like, okay, that's all I need. I only need to see something once. If I see one person do it, I'm like, okay, I know I can do something similar. Maybe it'll take me longer.
Yeah.
Maybe, it won't be the same path, but I know I can do the same things, and maybe even greater things. So at this time, I'm like, I'm all in, right? I'm like,
Mhm.
it's pandemic anyway, or now we're starting to kind of come out of the pandemic, but not really. Um, no one's touring, right? People are obviously listening to music, and there's a lot of artists that are kind of going crazy on like the Instagram live and all that type of stuff. But I was like, at the end of the day, I know I want to figure out how I can really bring in capital so that I can help sustain myself as an artist and really put my best foot forward because I know I've done the work from like a study and a practice standpoint as an artist and as a songwriter and as a musician.
Yeah.
But I just need to level the playing field with these artists that are signing with these major labels and things of that nature. So, yeah, I ended up starting to create different resources to help people like myself get into the space. Like I had a Discord where I was just
Mhm.
teaching my friends about crypto. I started a platform called Afro Zero, which was kind of like a magazine highlighting um, Black and Indigenous people of color and African people throughout the diaspora, just highlighting their work on chain, in crypto, in art, things of that nature. We even did a couple drops with some really special artists, like helping artists get their art on chain. And this is before I did anything. This is before I
Yeah.
ever dropped an NFT or any of that, right? I
Yeah.
just, I was like, I want to show this to more people. Like, I feel like more people
Mhm.
need to see this. And I dedicated my like first 6 to 8 months on chain to just creating those resources and helping share that information with other people. Pete ended up adding me to a group chat for a platform called Sound.xyz.
Mhm.
And I went into the group chat and like saw all these like cool musicians and stuff. And I'm just like, what is this? Like, where am I? Right. And but then I went to the Sound website and I was like, whoa, this is dope. I don't know what this is, but I really want to, be involved. And
Yeah.
then, bro, a couple of days later, I get a call from David Greenstein, the who was the founder of
Mhm.
Sound, and he calls me and immediately just starts venting. He just starts
Hmm.
like venting about everything, about all the stuff that's going on chain, and
Mm.
what it means to start a company, and you know
Oh, like
like
positive venting.
no,
It was
I mean
like
it
okay.
was like half and half. Like it was like inspirational venting. It was
Okay.
like you know this shit sucks. This, what I
Right.
mean? This, that, and the third is
Here's what
happening.
we can
But
do.
my goal is to help. I
Yeah.
want to help 50 million artists make
Mm.
money for themselves, right? Like, it was that
Sick.
kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And just seeing, like, I didn't get a single minute to like say a word on that call,
Hmm.
right? Which I just hadn't experienced in a long time. But I knew I was like, okay, this is going to be something that I think is going to be successful. Like obviously I don't know the trajectory of anything at this stage in the game, but like I know this is something that he's really passionate about and that people are obviously galvanizing around.
Yeah.
And I just want to see like where this goes. So yeah, man. To make a long story short, I think at this time I kind of had started like building a relationship with Iman Europe, who's a really talented singer, rapper, songwriter, actually just dropped an album called Chrysalis. Go check that out.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
at this time, like, had just really started building a relationship with her because she's, an LA native, really talented artist that's been around. She ended up being the head of artist relations at Sound really early on, and just through like my relationship with David, my relationship with her, I was able to be one of the first artists to release on Sound. I was actually the last artist to release on like I want to say season one because there was like season zero, I
Right.
guess technically, and then like season one.
Mhm.
So I was like, I don't know, like the 60th artist to release on there. A lot of people think I was like like one of the first like seven artists to release or
Yeah.
something. It's like no, I was like I wasn't late in the game, but I was early, but I was like late early, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I released a song called Heaven on Earth. And that song did $7,500 in revenue
Mm.
and sold out basically within the first like 10 seconds or something like that. Which was like just a crazy thing to witness, right? And I think for me, it shifted my perspective of the value of music,
Yeah.
right? And obviously,
Mhm.
everyone has like conspiracies about like the Web3 space and the Web3
Yeah.
music. Like it's far enough removed now that we could talk about it like
For
pretty openly
sure.
and freely. But like
For sure.
everyone had their perspectives, and personally, I feel like the end goal was to shift perspective, right?
Yes.
To like to create a environment where people were able to look at the value of art and look at the value of music differently.
Yes.
Because there is a world where auctions like that for art pieces happen
Mhm.
and artists make tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in very short amount of time in a
Mhm.
very short amount of time for art pieces that one person thinks is incredible and another person thinks, oh, I can do that
Yeah.
myself. Right? Why does that exist for visual art, but
Right.
not for music, right? Because it's still, I mean, music is something that you can't even see. You can't grab it. You can't like quantify it even,
Yeah.
right? Yet it's something that still exists and it's something that we all utilize and appreciate on a day to day basis. And if you ask most people if they would be able to live a life without music, almost all of them would say no, right?
Mhm.
So whether or not your thought process is all of that was manufactured at that time, or if your thought process is that was just a bubble of really excited people.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that time period in Web3 music created a shift in mentality, at least for the people that were involved,
For
that
sure.
there is a potential future where music can be valued um, at a really high level. All you need to do is gather the people that have enough conviction around the value of music and have enough conviction around the artists individually for what they create, but
Yeah.
also have enough conviction about how artists should be treated and compensated
Yeah.
on a larger and a smaller scale. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have to be Drake or
Right.
Beyonce to make a living. Like you shouldn't have to be in the top 1% of performers. And when I say performers, I mean you shouldn't have to perform at the top 1% level in
Yeah.
order to just make a decent living as an artist or as a musician. And I think that is just the lesson or the narrative that on-chain music, at least during that bubble, was trying to spread, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So yeah, I watched that happen with my song and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Okay, cool. Right. And like now I was already bought in, but now I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to really see it like firsthand how
Mhm.
this works. So I released my second music NFT, I want to say like 2 months later. It was called Password. That one took 24 hours, but it was 50 editions and I made 15K, right? On that project, which 24 hours, right? Like it's one thing if you see a song go in like 10 minutes, right? It's
Yeah.
another thing if you see it slow burn over the course of 24 hours. Cause like I want to say my drop was like, oh, sorry, the password drop was only the second or third drop that didn't sell out instantly, right? And I want to say the drop that happened before mine actually had not sold out. It didn't do as well. The only reason
Yeah.
why I'm saying that is because I feel like at that point, that was where the shift happened, where it's like, this isn't just something where like there's just people throwing money at it, right? Like this is actually people who are interested in this music. Now, whether they're buying it because they're speculating
Yeah.
or because they feel like it could be valuable in the future or they just like the music, that's a whole different discussion in itself.
Yeah.
But the dynamics of which the sales were happening were different than like the earlier seasons.
Yeah.
So, um, I'm studying all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
yes, I'm making money, but like the circumstances unforeseen, right? But this still isn't like life-changing money at that time. Like it's
Mhm.
life-changing. It was life-changing for me in the sense that like I had nothing still, right? I'm still figuring out. I'm like
Right.
throughout my time in LA, I'm going from having a lot to not having a lot to having a lot to not having a
Yeah.
lot to not having a lot to having even less to being, my back is against the wall. I'm eating pasta
Yeah.
and peanut butter sandwiches every day until I figure out, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
coming from that to discovering Web3 in that capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, that's life changing. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not life changing money, right? So I'm still, I'm studying everything and I'm super immersed at this point. I'm going to every IRL event you can think of. I'm going to
Yeah.
NFT NYC. I'm going to Art Basel.
Mhm.
I'm going to, I don't know, name something.
South by
I'm going to South by
East
Southwest.
Denver.
I'm going to East Denver,
Yeah.
right? Even like LA Tech Week and all this stuff.
Bogota.
I'm going to Bogota, Colombia to
Yeah.
perform,
Yeah.
right? I'm performing at all these different events too. Like I'm fully immersed in this music NFT space. Um Now like because of a lot of the business acumen that I was able to garner through like the pandemic and working with these medical companies and stuff like that. Now I'm knowing like that was the crazy thing about Web3 was like there's startups everywhere, right?
Yes.
And the startups need the artists because the
Yes.
artists there's no on-chain music platform without on-chain musicians, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of musicians, but none of them are on-chain,
Yeah.
right? So like I was a type of artist where from my very first release, right? Like everything that I did had a lot of intention. There was a lot of depth, right? There was a lot
Mhm.
you could dive into. And I was willing to talk about the process like the entire way through. So
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of founders kind of gravitated towards me for that purpose because they felt like that's someone that I can have a conversation with that is going to help me create a better product and help me create a better experience for artists and for other fans. Cause I was
Yeah.
always willing, like, I was never scared to just share my opinion on what I
Yeah.
felt was like happening. So because of this, like, now I'm building relationships with so many different founders in the space. And now I'm consulting for
Yeah.
different companies, right? And kind of building up my portfolio in the tech space, which was not my intention, at least. It's not, I
Yeah.
can't say it's not something I didn't dream of for myself, but that wasn't my intention coming into
Right.
the on-chain music space. I just wanted to create dope shit and
Yeah.
hopefully make some money doing it, right? So yeah, just fully immersed in this space. I released Heaven on Earth, I released Password. I went on to release like the first Eternal Garden album, which was
Mhm.
7 songs, and we did 50K in sales on that drop over the course of 7 days. And that was, I mean, I don't know what people's perspective. I mean, I know that like in terms of like the on-chain music space, Eternal Garden was a legendary project, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't the first project to do what it did. Like Daniel Allen, for example, who's a really amazing DJ producer, had done some really incredible drops. Rio Cragen, incredible artist, had done some drops like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, artists like Latasha had done some really big drops.
Mhm.
I would say Eternal Garden was definitely following in those footsteps as one of like the first on-chain like albums or EPs,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it, that was able to do things at scale, right? Um, and that project was, I feel like there were people in the space who like had teams or were working with people that were already very established in crypto. One thing I could definitely say about myself, which I don't know, there were so many like conspiracies at that time that like I don't know who believes what. But one thing
Okay.
I can definitely say is boots on the ground, bro. Like
Mm.
me, I was working with Lottie Day. A lot of y'all know
Mhm.
her as like a super famous internet person. Um, she was my manager at the time, and she and I are taking calls with every collector you could think of
Yeah.
in Web3. I'm talking to every platform that you could think of in Web3. Like, listen, I have 700 NFTs I'm trying to sell. What I got to do to get you to buy some of these NFTs? You know what I'm saying? Um, this is the amount of NFTs that I've sold so far. You
Mhm.
know, this is the amount that I'm trying to sell. Like I'm talking to literally everybody. It's like I basically went through the process of fundraising without knowing that I was going
Yeah.
through what the fundraising process looked like. I was just trying to sell my NFTs
Yeah,
pretty
for
much,
sure.
right? And even like sound, like even David, he's telling me like, because this is at the same time that the FTX uh stuff is happening, and you know the crypto crash and everything. And he's like, bro, like the market's bad. You shouldn't sell NFTs at point one. And I'm like, bro, I'm selling these. Like we're
Yeah.
gonna figure it out. You know what I mean? I want to say I ended up selling them at like 0.07 or something like that. But
Mhm.
um, even that price point at that time was still way above where people were selling their NFTs. So I feel like I'm rambling, but that project was what widely successful, and that kind of put me and like my music and my art in kind of a different conversation when it
Mhm.
came to on-chain artists, when it came to on-chain music. And a lot of the things that I did at that time became a blueprint for how other artists not could like sell their NFTs or their art, but how they could just put intention behind their projects,
Yeah.
right? Like we're not just dropping the song and being like, if the first 5 people that buy an NFT get a t-shirt, right?
Right.
That first Eternal Garden album was, first of all, when you bought the album, you didn't know, you know, what song like you were getting. So like even once everything was revealed and you knew what you had and you could go
Mhm.
back and buy kind of the rest of the project, if you had all of the NFTs, then you were able to unlock the first Eternal Garden story. Like I had wrote, it wasn't as long as like the novels that we've done now, but it was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe a 15-page book, right? That you could
Mhm.
read that kind of was telling the backstory and the lore of Eternal Garden, which by the way was tied to the stories that I had wrote in my Password drop and the stories that I had wrote in the Heaven on Earth release. So it just kind of became a blueprint for how to really just be intentional. And that is kind of what led to a lot of people being really excited about Eternal Garden as more than just this one drop. They're like, okay, well, there's a story attached to this. Like, does this story grow? Does it become
Yeah.
something else? Like, where do we go from here? And I was like, okay, bet. I was not necessarily expecting this to be more than what it is. In
Right.
fact, I thought Eternal Garden was just going to be like a small precursor to like a whole different project.
Story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
For sure.
um I was like, oh wow, people are really gravitating towards this. So I was like, okay, this is the thing, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep building on top of this world and see like where it goes. So I released a couple uh releases in between the first Eternal Garden album drop and then my next project drop, which was Origins. And Origins was actually just Whispers, like the Whispers album that I had worked on years prior,
Mhm.
but it wasn't on chain. And obviously, anything that you put on chain is brand new if it hasn't been on chain before, right? And
Mhm.
I had an opportunity to kind of remarket this project to a brand new audience. And so that project, we ended up selling 7,000 NFTs. And I don't remember how long it took me to sell it, but it was I think it was the same deal. I think it was like a week, right? And at this point, the market, I guess I should say this, but the price points of music NFTs like continue to drop like
Yeah.
year over year
Yeah.
because as soon as like the price of Ethereum dropped, then the narrative became, well, I don't have enough money to buy a music NFT at zero point 0.1 ETH.
Yeah.
My mentality was always, well, if your idea is to buy music NFTs at a low price and sell them at a high price, then ETH being low should be the reason that you actually do buy the NFTs
Mhm.
because you're essentially getting them at a discount right now,
Mhm.
right? Because let's say my music NFT doesn't sell out, but it does get popular. If you bought it when ETH is at 2,500, right? It's a lot better than buying it when ETH is at 4K,
Yeah.
right? It's like $150
Yeah.
discount, if that makes sense. So I
Mhm.
never bought that. I never bought it. I just thought that it was just people wanting to get artists to drop the price of their music NFTs so that they could get them at like lower price points and they could just like acquire a large range of assets,
Mhm.
and who knows what those assets will be in the future, but that's the way that I looked at it.
Mhm.
Still, so like I still was someone that always sold my work for higher than whatever the market was doing. But I experimented with everything, right? I experimented with selling one of ones. I
Mhm.
experimented with selling 25 editions. I sold 50 editions. I did 100 editions, you know. I did open editions where it
Yeah.
was like there's unlimited supply. I did like bonding curve experiments. And then Origins was okay, let's see if I can sell 7,000 NFTs at 0.001 ETH
Yeah.
or something like that, right? And I was able to do that. That taught me a lot about foreign markets. You know, I had like
Mhm.
30% of my sales came from buyers in Vietnam and the Philippines, which was like really special. So like this whole process is really just research and development,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm just kind of
Experimentation.
yeah, and I've just become this artist that is just kind of showing one of the artists that is showing the way forward for how um patronage works, but also
Yeah.
how direct to consumer relationships work, how speculation works, all of the above. And I have maybe like we'll get into the depths of that in a different episode, but obviously I have a lot of thoughts about um speculation when it comes to music and art and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, I say all this to say, um, my next idea after having done the Eternal Garden project and having done Whispers and um I launched this DAO called Campfire where I brought a bunch of on-chain musicians together to kind of have a songwriters union, and we did writing camps in different cities across America and put the music on chain when it was done. Like I did a lot of different projects like that in the midst of me releasing music on chain. But my next idea was like, okay, I want to start bringing in other artists that I know and I really like and whose music I love and artists that I respect into the Eternal Garden ecosystem.
Yeah.
So some of them will be on chain already, some of them won't be, but it would be dope if I produce an album for this artist and create a character for them within the Eternal Garden world or Eternal
Mhm.
Garden universe. And yeah, help them tell a story uh through Eternal Garden as a platform. And so I kind of started thinking about how I was gonna execute that idea. And in the midst of that, I wrote the whole kind of Eternal Garden world build out. And I was like, this world needs to, I need to have a foundation for for like how this world works as a
Yeah.
whole. So I know you mentioned that probably like 3 hours ago now because I've been talking forever. But yeah, that was the Bible, basically the Eternal
Yeah.
Garden Bible that I started to write, and it's still the foundation for everything that we create to this day. So, in the process of releasing these projects, this is when you and I started having conversations
Mhm.
because I was trying to get the company that you were working with to like work with me and potentially invest in the projects that I was doing and things of that nature. And yeah, pretty much you were like, you should try this, you should try that, you should try this. And I was like, okay, I'm down, but like
Mm.
I'm already doing a lot of stuff. Like,
Right?
can you kind of help me? Can you help me like figure out exactly how I can do this like really efficiently? And yeah, you were basically just like, look, I'm willing, like I've I've looked at this project. I really like this project. I'm willing to like whatever you need me to do. I'm willing to try and
Mhm.
see where I can help. And I was like, okay, cool. And I'll never forget. It was like when I started the process of like ideating the codex,
Yeah.
um, which became like the real Eternal Garden
Right.
Bible slash encyclopedia. Was when I was like, look, like I'll show you how I'm like prompting to create these AI images, and then
Mhm.
you could try it. You're like, yeah, I'm down. And then I'll never forget like that first day you just were like prompting so much stuff. And
Mhm.
I think you told me that was like your first time really like ever really like prompting images like
Yeah.
that.
It
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
for sure.
And like it
And
was
in
like
that way too,
yeah.
you
It
know?
was like you immediately it
I
was
was so excited.
yeah, immediately like you caught the bug. You were like,
100%.
"Oh nah, like this is crazy." And
100%.
then I just go back and I just see like all these images and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, she's locked in." So
Yeah.
yeah, it was like working on the codex, which I'll go grab the codex in a second,
Mhm.
or maybe you have one. But it was in working on the codex that we actually started like talking and working like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And then that's when we started having those like correct me if my timeline is wrong, but I think that's
Okay.
when we started to have like the sleepless nights.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
just like prompting stuff and being like, yo, you gotta like work in the
Yeah.
morning
Yeah.
and stuff. And yeah, I mean that pretty much like um brings me to like us really working together in like a serious capacity, which kind of just links to what you said in the
Yeah.
beginning. But yeah, it's like it's crazy. Like all you can see how like usually when I tell this story in a condensed format, right? Like I'll draw the line between me being on like anime fan fiction forums,
Right.
right? Or like drawing my own characters or playing certain video games and creating things for artists, you know, helping artists bring their visions to life. Usually I'll draw the through line, but I think if you listen to this from beginning to end, you can see how all those like early influences kind
Yeah.
of added to how they, you know, culminated in me being an artist that um is creating my own world and
Yeah.
has is someone that has always been really intentional about the music that I make and the story that I'm telling and the message that I'm getting across and ultimately the world that gets created out of the music uh that I've been writing. And so I feel like Eternal Garden as a project is like it's a culmination of that, but it's
Yeah.
also it's not like here's the idea, right? It's like it's been like this
It's been
over
building.
time,
Mhm.
you know? There's like a whole bunch of stuff underneath it.
Yeah.
And then but Eternal Garden is like the project that you see, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like the shiny object at the top that's like, okay, this is the thing. But
Yeah.
it's it's because of everything that I built not only for myself but for other people and like the
Mhm.
skills that like I acquired along the way
Mhm.
that gave me the ability to even think that I could create a world like this and then find ways to, I guess, share it and like proliferate it over time. So anyway,
Yeah.
last thing I'll say is that yeah, you came along and you were phenomenal pretty much out the gate because as someone who is a self-starter and like you said, someone who has always had to kind of take things into my own hands in order to make them work. Like you're someone that has always like ran as fast as I'm running and sometimes running even faster than me when I'm like, all right, I need a break.
Mhm.
And so I was like, yeah, like Claire's the one. Like that's somebody that I can definitely work with long term. And I think yeah, I think we just got to a point like once, you know, me, you and Pete, you know, I'm trying to remember the timeline of everything, but once we really were like, okay, Codex is coming out, when we do
Yeah.
the whole Codex drop, right?
Man,
And all that, I think we were like, okay, we're we're in it for the
we're
long
locked in.
haul. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
for
then
sure.
you know, pretty much, you know, that's when the relationship with the previous company came
Came
to
to a
an end.
close.
And then
Yeah.
it was like, okay, well, we're really in it now, you know,
Yeah.
because you could have easily been like, well, I'm just gonna go get another job, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? um, while also doing this, and that probably would have been sufficient.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I probably would have been, I like,
Maybe.
you know, but I'm saying like,
For you, you're
I would
saying?
not have, I wouldn't have been able to be like, no,
Don't
you know what I
yeah,
mean? You
for
can't
sure,
do
for
that,
sure,
right?
for sure.
Because it's
Yeah.
not like I was providing that type of, uh, um,
Support.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly,
for sure.
financially. But yeah, if you want to like pick up that, like pick up from there
Yeah.
and maybe even get into like us getting to the CY portion and all of that, that would be really
Yeah,
fire.
for
And
sure. It was such a synchronicity for me at that time, and I think I didn't realize the extent of it until I, like, a certain amount of time has passed and I've been able to, like, look back on it objectively, because so much was happening at that time, but our life paths were flipped to a certain extent. Like, when I was we'll get into my life story at a later date, but when I was younger, when I was a kid, I was very much exposed to a wide range of creative exploration. I did a lot of like improv. I did theater. I did a lot of acting, which was super fun. I always enjoyed that a lot. I did dance. I played the trumpet for like 4 years. I tried a bunch of different things, and that was when I like really developed an appreciation for the art world. But I kind of put that in my back pocket because life happened, and when I went to college, I ended up studying like more on like the topic of business, like business and communications to be specific. And I ended up just working at startups in technology, and I was like building products. And what was cool was like we were always working with talent in some capacity, or working with in entertainment. It was like brands, it was artists, independent teams, agencies, design, like all sorts of different things were happening. um and by the time I ended up at that, that last job, which was very focused on working with artists specifically, I knew that I wanted to I wanted to get a lot closer to music. And I think we even had conversations about this before we decided to work together. And it didn't even feel like I had much of a choice in the matter when we started working together, because it felt so perfectly timed and so obvious to me that even when that my previous company decided to go their separate way from me, I didn't even feel, I mean, you saw I mourned for like a day. I wasn't experiencing a lot of anxiety about the future. I have moments where I was like, "Oh wow, this is a very different, you know, this is a lot less security than I'm used to, but I'm just going to like see it through because this is an incredible opportunity and something that I'm being like called to do and pursue." And I was living in New York at the time, very expensive place to live, and a lot was changing. So I was just like, we're going to figure this out. And I feel like that's like my mantra as a
Yeah.
person, is just like, we're going to figure this out no matter what. And I'll try everything until I know I've tried everything. Um
Facts.
and so yeah, to get into like how we grew after we started working together, we started working on our first project called Zero. And around that same time, we were saying, okay, we've got this project in motion. We've got a lot of like the fundamentals and the structure pretty baked out. And you had already done a lot of the legwork on building the foundation of the story. So we were saying, okay, how do we take this and turn it into something even more tangible as a company?
Mm-hmm.
And so that led us down a path of, okay, we're going to plan to release this drop in the next couple of months, mid-year, around summertime. And in the meantime, let's go all in on fundraising for this company so that we can be even more serious about this, and be able to put real resources behind releasing these projects, creating these projects, and building something big. And so it was crazy. I remember we were like, all right, we're going to start fundraising. And we decided that towards the end of the year, going into Christmas, we took a break, came back, and by February, we were starting all of the setup. We were getting really serious. We had our decks ready to go. We had the pitch lined up, everything. And a lot of the VCs are relatively spread out. Like there's a lot of VCs obviously in San Francisco, some in California, but like a lot of them were pretty centered in New York, especially the tech VCs. And there's just a big tech community, the crypto VCs. And so we were saying, all right, we've developed this concept for what we're going to build. It's obviously rooted in developing this IP, right? And rooted it's rooted in an artistry, but we're going to also lean into the fact that we both have a lot to offer in the world of technology. You've done all of this crazy innovation and experimentation with your releases. I've been in the tech world forever.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have this vision for doing things differently, this newfound perspective of, okay, you know what, we're going to reintroduce a whole new system to how you value creativity. And, music is one thing, but obviously we go into different mediums. And so we built our pitch around that, right? And I remember saying, all right, well, going out into the world and starting to have all these different conversations with VCs in New York. You had been connecting us to some in California, and we started to have those early conversations. And I remember that just became like a full-time job. Even just like getting those conversations, those initial conversations was like beating your head against the wall, you know? And
Absolutely.
for a variety of reasons. It's political, it's built on relationships, and built on who you know. And luckily, you and I had been in a lot of those rooms. So we had some of those foundational relationships as it is, which I think was really great. Because obviously starting those conversations was easier. And we knew so many of the founders in the space that we got connected to. We had introductions, right, to VCs as well. So I remember we started getting some calls on the calendar, started taking regular calls each week, and we started strong too. We started really strong. Like we ended up talking to pretty much all of the biggest VCs in the tech space.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
right? And like we don't talk about that much, but like
We went
Andreessen,
straight to the top.
we went straight to the top.
Yeah.
I mean, Andreessen was like in the middle, but Kindred, who was it? Variant.
Yeah.
Um,
Shout out to Mason.
Shout out to Mason. Collab Currency, Archetype,
Yeah, Palm Tree. Dang, I forgot we talked to like all of them.
Yeah, we talked to all of them.
Yeah.
We talked to all of them. And I mean, we were doing it together because it was, I actually think that was a really cool, informative experience because you're dealing with so much through that journey. It's confidence, it's refining your story as much as possible. And I think that was a really great experience for us, that we were pushed to refine the story so much because we had already established it, but it really forced us to get super concise. And by the time we had finished that process, we knew we had such a newfound strength in what we were doing that I didn't really expect to come of that experience. And so beyond that, you're also dealing with rejection, right? You have that first call, seems like it went well. Oh, we'll be in touch. And then next thing you know, a week later, the email comes in. Sorry.
Yeah.
It ain't happening.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, it not even just like people being super excited,
Yes.
being super excited and be like, wow, this is, you know what I mean? And also us, like, our deck was insane.
Yeah.
Like, we refined that deck 100 times over.
Yeah.
Because
yes, we did.
To even talk to some of these like VCs and funds, it's like there's like a proxy person, right? Who's like, you talk to me first, you present everything to me. I will basically give you tips on what it is that you need to do in order for me to take it to the bosses or whatever.
Yeah.
And then that will happen. So we went through that process a lot. And that's how we refined our deck so many times, right? And that also influenced kind of, because we're so multifaceted, it influenced what we were putting as like our best foot forward, right?
Yeah.
So like there was Eternal Garden Zero as like a multiplayer ecosystem project where, we're really coming from a straight up like support the arts perspective, which is like we're launching this overall universe, right? Like this sci-fi fantasy world. But it's told, at least right now, through the lens of these artists and their music projects, right? To then being like, yeah, these venture funds don't give a fuck about none of that.
Yeah.
Where's the tech? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
And we're like, oh, okay, well, hold on. We do have tech, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I should say what our tech is on here.
No, you shouldn't.
But we have tech. We have proprietary tech, right? That users and artists and everyone, like, that basically creates this ecosystem in which like a lot of people can come together to tell a story, pretty much, right? And we simplify the process in which like people can to basically help us tell this story. And
Mhm.
that can be white labeled not only for us, but really for many franchises, many different people that are in the same kind of category that we're in.
Mhm.
So like leading with that also, like that those conversations like shifted, like, okay, well, this is kind of the right, like this will be the hook. But
Yeah.
then some conversations, they're like, oh, I'm not interested in that. Tell me more about the artist, right?
Yeah.
So it's,
Exactly.
it's like always, it was always different depending on who
Yeah.
you were talking to. And because we had so much potential, it felt like because we had so much diversity, it felt like, well, they'll latch on to something, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, it was always be like, oh, well, I'm really excited about that thing. And we'd be like, okay, great. But then they'll come back and be like, sorry, you can't like
Yeah.
do
It's not the
X, Y,
time.
Z. And he's like, on to the
Yeah.
next, on to
Yeah.
the next,
Yeah.
you know?
And
Cause
I
it's
think
like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that it's like, I think it was a blessing and it was a blessing in disguise, and we know
Yeah.
why and get to that reason. But I also think that objectively, it was a timing thing. I think that if we had come together as a team, if we had met 1 year sooner and come together as a team and tried to fundraise a year, give or take, earlier, I think it would have looked very different.
Mm,
And so
yeah, for sure.
everything happens for a reason, whether you believe that or not. Everything happens for a reason. And I think it's really clear why this happened for us. Um, and as intense as that process was, I think it taught us a lot about also like what it means, why it's important to stay true to who you are through that process.
Mhm.
Because on the flip side of things, if we had raised money successfully, we may have ended up working with an investor that didn't understand the full extent of what we were doing and wanted to prioritize something different, and inevitably ended up pushing us in a direction, or putting us up against a wall where we have to decide between working with them, more funding, putting aside what we really believe in, fill in the blank. I think there's a really clear reason why that didn't come to fruition.
Yeah. I mean,
you
even
know
like the level of patience that is required
yeah.
to let a project like ours evolve,
Yeah.
because the other thing that we haven't really talked about is the fact that we're now acting as a venture studio, right?
Mhm.
So it's not just our project, like it's not just Eternal Garden or like TK, it's like all the things that we individually are investing in, right? Like,
Yeah.
are you willing to see the full scope of you know the different things that we believe in, but then also give the time that it takes in order for certain things to go from a seed into,
Yeah.
a forest? Probably not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it worked out in the end.
For sure. I mean, J.K. Rowling was declined by 12 publishers
Yeah.
before she found her team, which
They told the Beatles that they weren't good at music. They'd never make it on television.
that tells you everything you need to know.
Jesus was the son of a carpenter.
So, anyways, that was an interesting experience. But to get back into the timeline, I remember that we were kind of towards the tail end of being really, really deep in fundraising. And I don't think either of us were discouraged, but I think we both were, we had received enough rejections to where we were like, okay, we're going to have to revisit our strategy behind all of this and figure out, how can we, what's going on? What are we going to do to bring in more money? And we were going to keep fundraising. We were just going to keep it pushing, really. And um, I remember this so vividly. It was it was a summer night and I was on a rooftop and we were texting back and forth, and I was like looking, this is so dramatic, but I was like looking over the view of Manhattan, and we were texting and we were like, talking about the state of the union. And you brought up this individual. You said, have you messaged this investor, CY Lee? And I had told you that, he and I had dinner earlier that year, and I had really pitched him the project over dinner. I had brought the codex. We had a really great conversation, and by the end of it, I was pitching him. And long story short, he just said no. And so I told you, when we were texting, I said, he's already said no. It's, that's decided. And you were like, no, just ask him again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, sure, might as well. And so, that night, probably within that hour, I texted him. He responded relatively quickly, and we had a meeting on the books the next week. And it was it was a pivotal moment for us, because we got into that meeting, we pitched him the project again, and it was a different conversation because he had already known quite a bit. And for context, CY is a historically a founder himself. He's built several really successful tech products, and has done really well in the space, and has a deep appreciation for the arts. So he came into the Web3 space as a patron, a consultant, a builder as well. He was doing all sorts of different things, but he was really well known for his patronage specifically. He was collecting a lot of artists' work and being very vocal about it too. And I had a relationship with him on my own at my previous company. I had met him. He was consulting. We were having really great conversations, and over time we just developed a relationship. You had a separate relationship with him as well. He was following your work, one of your collectors, and obviously he was very big in the music Web3 space. So he knew all the artists, and all the artists knew him as well. And so fast forward to the conversation, we had asked him to come in as an angel investor, because we were in our VC bag. We were like, come in, we'll give you equity, all of that. And he's like, no. He's like, I love this project. I want to support you guys, but I don't want to do traditional venture capital. I want to come in as a patron.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we were both like, huh? We were both shocked for many reasons, not because he was excited, but just hearing that was like such a shift in perspective, especially after all the conversations that we had had. And it was really from that point on that we started working together. Within a week, he came in as a supporter, and he started to really tell us about this like much larger vision that he had, and this all centered around this massive reframe for how artists and artist-led companies should be funded and supported. And it was through the concept of patronage, which is a concept that has existed for hundreds of years, already is in existence, but he's bringing it back and putting more of a modern spin on it by investing through technology, and buying NFTs at very high prices, varying ranges, but generally at high prices, and being very vocal about that as his mission beyond just being a collector. And so that was really the starting point for us getting involved in him, having him as an executive producer, also helping him build out his ecosystem and tell that story, and really being champions too of this complete like perspective shift that, we've obviously been completely invested in since we started working together.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's what made me tell you to ask him again, because there were a few things. Well, first of all, I'll say this: like, CY and I want to say we met in person for the first time for real at a writing camp that Latasha was having, for a project that she was working on. Like it was one of the things, like I was like one of the top artists in the space, and he was like one of, if not the top collector in the space, but we never really interacted. So we see each other, and it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like he's looking at me like, and I'm looking at him like, it was kind of like we were like talking without talking. It was like, why haven't we like had a conversation? Like, why haven't we worked together?
Yeah.
And I just remember us both like eyes like this, like,
Yeah.
we're gonna talk. And then he's
Mhm.
like, we're gonna talk. And then he walks. He's like leaves, right? And
Makes sense.
yeah, like because he was sitting, obviously he was having conversations with other people that were there, and I came later on in the day. I think he had already
Yeah.
been there. So, um, yeah, you had that conversation with him, but one thing that you said to me was he had brought up wanting to launch this executive producership program.
Yeah.
And then you also told me that he was really excited about the codex
Yeah.
and how it looked and everything. And he was like, I'm not going to invest, but
Mhm.
this is what I ultimately want to do. I think Carl was there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, this is ultimately what I want to do. And like, I really like this thing. So in my mind, I'm like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, just like see where he's at, like now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like this is something that he wants to do eventually. Maybe now is not the right time or whatever, but like
Yeah.
something that he wants to do eventually. But I just want to know more about that, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously we started having that first conversation, or those first few conversations that we had with him were pretty intense because
Mhm.
it was like an ideological
Almost.
battleground,
Yeah.
right? Where ultimately we figured out that we were all saying the same thing.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
He's basically like, why are you trying to raise money? And we're
Yeah.
just like, because we need money.
Yeah.
And then he's like we're thinking like he's like, no, you shouldn't be trying to raise money at all. But
Yeah.
ultimately what he was getting around to was like, you shouldn't be raising money and giving a VC like equity,
Yeah.
right? And giving them control and giving them this level of control over you at such like a pivotal stage of your development, because
Mhm.
you don't know exactly where, like, how long this might take to get to the point. Like, this is just a bigger project than like going just to raise like quick VC money. And also, you don't
Yeah.
need to raise as much money as you guys are trying to raise.
Yeah.
And we're just like, okay, well, that sounds good, but like, what are we going to do? And he's like, well, I'll come in and this is what I'm trying to do. Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to build this executive producer ecosystem, right? Where high net worth individuals are, um, you know, supporting artists as their contribution to culture.
Mhm.
And it's like no strings attached. It's not like, maybe that could exist in some world, but it's not like, oh, we need, equity out of your company off jump or anything like that. It's just like attribution.
Mhm.
And I think when we finally like all kind of figured out we were on the same page, it was like, even though, it wasn't the millions of dollars that we were trying to raise, it still was like, okay, well, let's see. Okay, he's saying he can do that. All right. That's still, far beyond what we're working with right now. Let's see
Yeah.
what we can do over a certain period of time.
Yeah.
And I think over time we just started to understand the ideologies like better. And
Yeah.
for us, it was just like, well, just as artists, this is like an artist's dream, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, it was like it was pretty crazy to just like
Yeah.
go through that process and ultimately land in working with him. And like, he's obviously just like such a pleasure to work with, because he allows like the people that he's working with to just create and be
Yeah.
artists and like try to, execute their vision, and just wants to understand what's going on, and like will give his insight where it makes sense. But most of the conversations we have, it's not like you need to do this and you need to do that. It's more so
Yeah.
like high level conversations of like what type of messaging we're putting out there, like
Yeah.
in general. So
Mhm.
anyway, yeah, definitely was a really cool, like, just was an experience, man. It was an experience
Yeah.
like going like from, all right, we're fully in this VC fundraising bag, to like complete 180, like, oh, we're not going in that direction at all. We're really
Yeah.
going in like an angel investor like path, but it's not like, you're not technically investing. Well, he doesn't like to use the word investing, but you get what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a whole different thing entirely, which is more so just like building on top of what at least I was already doing in
Yeah.
terms of like building a relationship with a collector,
Mm-hmm.
selling an NFT, you're right, and they know that that's going towards like supporting the artists and like building. Except now it's
Yeah.
like on a larger scale because it's like it supports a wider range of initiatives, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, shout out to CY.
Yeah.
We got to get him on here again. We had him on for like, I know this is our first episode, but I guess we did like a pre-podcast one time
We
and we
did.
had him on, but we got to get him on
Yeah.
again.
We'll dive deep with him for sure.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah, that was a crazy experience. And it was very fulfilling too, because by the end of it all, it felt like the dynamic and philosophy that we centered around with him was so much of what the space was aiming to accomplish. It just kind of ended up happening in a very unexpected way,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yes. Yes.
Like
Exactly.
that's just like that's what's so like it's just such synchronicity to me because I mean on my side of things, like all the platforms that I worked at, like some of them, actually all of them, like in the early days, like crazy numbers, and it felt like we were on to something like really special,
Yeah, for
obviously.
sure.
Felt like we were gonna like change the world and change lives and have all this crazy impact.
Mm-hmm.
And it got a little sad at a certain point when, I had to face reality of like the market is changing and collecting you know, is not going away, but it's definitely like
It's
not
it's
what it
it's
used to
on life
be.
support.
It's on life, thank you. That's the
Yeah.
right term. I didn't want to like be super like down about it. But I was, I had reached a point of it's kind of like the like path of like entrepreneurship where it's like you come in with like a lot of optimism and then you kind of hit this like abyss
Mm-hmm.
when you're faced with a lot of reality, and then you kind of come back up, and I was down here because I was going through that process of being like, okay, well, a lot of the things that we were trying weren't didn't seem to have longevity, and then
Yeah.
sure enough it just kind of came back around in a completely different and much more authentic way with him. So that was a very fulfilling moment for
Yeah.
me too, which is because it's why I got big reason of why I got into the space in the first place is to fulfill all of that. So now
100%.
it's cool. Now I get to live it in a very
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy.
You're like on the other end of it.
Yeah,
I remember when we did and we should wrap this up, I guess. But like
yeah.
I remember when we did the zero drop.
Hmm.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there was multiple aspects of the zero drop, but when we did the zero drop with the videos, and you were like we're watching people like buy all the like the NFTs and stuff, and you're like, this is what it's like. Like
Yes,
this is what it's like to see people. And I just remember being like, oh damn, this is like technically your first
my first drop.
NFT drop.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
was used to it at that point. Like
yeah,
there's always the anxiety of like, is anyone gonna buy this stuff?
yeah.
Right? But sorry, I'm ordering my smoothies.
It's okay.
Um, there's always the anxiety of like, is anyone gonna buy this? Right?
Hmm.
But I'm still used to that process and like
Yeah,
knowing what it feels like when people actually do it. But like
yeah.
seeing you like in that process for the first time, I was like, damn, like it
I was
dawned on
shocked.
me like how, yeah,
It was
how
crazy.
real of a situation it is.
It was
It
crazy
was. Yeah.
for sure. And I remember we were all in different cities, obviously, but you were at a wedding
Yep.
at that time. I
Yep.
my
I'll
my,
never
my
forget it.
dates,
Hmm.
yeah. We were at a wedding, and so you were kind of less like around because you were just, doing your thing.
Hmm.
And I remember I was just like sitting at my computer when the drop started, and I just saw the numbers start to go up, and I was
Hmm.
just like, huh?
Yeah.
You know? So
Wild stuff. Wild stuff.
crazy.
Legendary stuff.
Yeah.
So, I guess what's next? What can we expect in the next episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think we got into like the weeds of the background, but I think talking more about what it is that we do today, the projects that we're working on is probably what we'll talk about next, and we can get into like our tech background and how we use technology in basically making our lives a lot easier
Yeah.
and the lives of everyone around us a lot easier. So I think those will be like what people can expect next.
Awesome. Okay.
Hmm.
Any final topics here, or are we signing off?
Let's close it with a question that popped into my head hours ago, which is if you had to pick one moment from that whole life story that you just shared, if you had to pick one moment that you think defined you the most, what would it be?
Def- wow, defined me the most.
Yes, if you had to pick one moment, because
Ugh.
it may have been a couple, but what would it be?
In the whole story,
Yeah, you're stranded on an island and your only way off is to answer this truthfully.
I think now my first inclination is always to like go with something that I did, right? Like something like perseverant. Like, for example, the first time that I was like, take me to the studio, right? Or
Hmm.
like I got to the studio and I'm like, I stuck with it or something. But then when I really think about it, I feel like that, like me taking those steps is kind of like it's a given for me, right? Like that's just
Mm,
kind of who I am and my nature. I think where I really see the most growth is like the things that I walk away from, right? Or the things
mm,
that I say like no, like I'm not, like even though that's an opportunity for me and that is something that I really need or could use at this point in time, I'm not gonna go
mhm.
through with it. So I don't know, maybe it's not like a defining moment for me, but I feel like
Okay.
those first couple years in LA, being like this phenom that like came through and just getting offered like terrible deals left and right. I feel like, you know, I could have taken those and who knows what would have happened, but I chose to bet on myself and just not let myself get taken advantage of like
Yeah,
really early on. And it was, I don't know, to a degree I can say it was the tougher path, right? Because there were opportunities that I lost, but I don't know where those opportunities would have led me to, right?
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, every now and then, like maybe once every like 3 years, I'll be like, should I have? And then I'm like, no, you know. Um, so I feel like in terms of like character defining, I feel like those moments for sure.
yeah.
But it's I would have to just be stranded on the island because there's
Hmm.
just too many. I look at all of those moments and I'm like,
Yeah,
that was one, that's one, that's one, that's one, that's one. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But yeah, I think I'll say this. I think taking that chance of moving, like leaving my hometown and moving to LA, like
Change
moving
everything.
just to a completely new place with no money in my pocket
Yeah,
and just taking a chance on myself and betting on myself and being like, okay, like let's see what we can do here. I feel like it was a defining moment because it's like it took everything that I had worked for, or everything that I had done prior to that moment, right? That's the connecting tissue between everything, like who I was be like before that and all the things that I've accomplished like since then, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So it's like my life literally would not be what it is if I didn't make that particular decision.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think that's just that is consistent. Like if you look at the fact that I made that decision, like that's consistent with everything that I've ever done really in my life because
yeah.
there was no security. Like an opportunity is just an opportunity, right? It's
Hmm.
not a guarantee.
Hmm.
So that's what I would say for sure.
Mm. I like that. I feel like saying that idea of saying no to things is also a good, it could be a single answer
Yes, I
in
agree.
its own right.
I agree.
Cool. Well, I think we leave them with that.
All right. Well, this was Eternal Ventures podcast, episode one,
So, 001.
001.
Mm-hmm.
Any last words?
Come back soon.
All right. Bye.
outside.